Welcome to Buckets, your daily NBA betting podcast. We are here in the Tommy John home studio. I'm here with Joe Dellera at Joe Dellera. We're missing Matt Moore. It's the future Jays. We took control of the ship. We are the captains now. We're running the Sunday night Monday futures look here. We're gonna do some futures talk, of course. It's Joe and I. We gotta do a little bit of futures. We're also gonna do it's a pretty soft Monday slate here. The kind of dipping, dodging, diving, ducking, and dodging this national championship. But we got two games. We'll give you at least a bet per game there. But really, Joe, it is insanity season in the Western Conference here. So I think we wanted to lead off with a little bit of banter about everything going on in the West. We got a week to go. We're in the stretch run here, but there's a lot of unknowns. Talk to me about what you're seeing out West right now.
I don't think I've ever seen the Western Conference quite like this, or even the Eastern Conference, right? Where teams 3 through 8 are 2 losses apart.
Yeah.
That's crazy. The implications of these games for those teams moving forward is so significant. There's going to be a lot of tiebreakers. I know Matt, I know he's not on this right now. Matt is probably going crazy with all the tiebreaker scenarios and he's screaming about how these regular season games did matter back in October. Yeah. So this is a really interesting spot. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for some teams to maybe slip into the play-in tournament that you're a little surprised that you might be a little surprised about.
Well, the thing that surprised me, Matt has been on this all year. Credit to him. He's been saying the teams are terrified of the play-in, and I got completely duped by this whole Kawhi Leonard thing this week. I was like, after on the back-to-back, Kawhi hasn't played a back-to-back all season. We're a week out from the playoffs. I started betting, so I bet Harden alt points. Now, he had a pretty good game, even though Kawhi played. I was certain that Kawhi wasn't going to play. I was like, oh, this is all nonsense. This is amazing. They'll list him as questionable. I'll get to hit a bunch of alts. He'll sit, of course. Why would they play their superstar? They've been giving him back-to-backs off all season. Why would they play him with a week to go? You're so close to the promised land where you don't have any back-to-backs in the playoffs. They played him. He was in the game in the fourth quarter up 23. It was legitimately insane, but I think it speaks to what you're saying is teams are pretty spooked by the play-in because not only is it one loss and you're out, but even if you're in that 7-8, it's one loss and you play OKC, which, isn't, your fate isn't totally sealed, but this OKC team is terrifying. So if you can get up to that 6 seed where you avoid OKC until the Western Conference Finals potentially, and you don't have to do the one game shenanigans and you get rest and you get advanced scouting, it does make sense to a degree that teams are really, putting a lot of effort into getting this. Have you looked over schedules at all? I know we chatted a little bit last week about who's got soft schedules. Minnesota is a team that's popping out to me as having a really soft schedule remaining and potentially being able to move up. But there's a lot of unknowns. What teams are you eyeing, and are there any ways you're approaching it right now?
Yeah, I think just to add on to what you were saying too about the standings and avoiding the play-in, you're gonna have extra games too. So it's instead of getting that rest spot at the end of the regular season between the regular season and the start of the playoffs, you have to play games. So I think there is a little bit of a spot where teams are going, well, you might have to play here because we'd rather you be able to get a week off as opposed to just playing the back-to-back right now. We'll manage your minutes a little bit. We just got to get you out of here. So that's the one thing. Looking at the remaining strength of schedule, it is a little interesting because some of the games I think are also popping as difficult, and I don't know if they are difficult.
Yeah.
The Lakers right now have an extremely difficult strength of schedule, right? But I don't know if it matters because the Thunder and the Rockets are the 2 games left. And that's what's making this such a difficult strength of schedule with 4 games left. But those teams are basically locked into their playoff positioning. And then the Rockets have a tough schedule, but it doesn't matter. They don't really need to play hard. If anything, they should be experimenting with a couple different things, maybe giving Fred VanVleet a day off here or there or something like that. Denver is in a brutal spot because they have to play the Rockets, but then they also have to play the Grizzlies, but the Grizzlies have a new coach. So there's that. And then on the flip side, if you look at it Miami, just trying to float around, stay alive, they have an easy schedule. Atlanta has an easy schedule. But Minnesota is the team that has the easiest schedule with important head-to-head games, right? Because they have a matchup against the Jazz, a matchup against the Nets. They should win both of those games. Then they have matchups against the Grizzlies and the Bucks, two teams that are just like absolutely floundering right now. And I think Milwaukee, the other thing that we've kind of noticed is they're just like, whatever. Like, we don't care. Like, what? Like, we have Giannis. We don't care if we're the 5 seed or the 6 seed. We'll just deal with the consequences of that. But he's got to be healthy because he hasn't been healthy for like the last 3 years going in the playoffs.
Yeah, we saw him be out today, and it's a nice little reminder of how bad that team is when he is out. But all right, so let's we had a fun little idea here. Hopefully this is fun. What we're going to do is we're going to draft team futures. It can be anything tethered to a team. It could be a player from that team winning Finals MVP. It could be the exact round that the team goes out. The DraftKings has those up right now. Those are really fun. Those will probably be a couple of ours here. We don't have like a set number, but the goal is once that someone takes that team, they're off the board. So, for example, I'm not going to do it, but say I took Jason Tatum to win Finals MVP. Then Joe can't take any Boston related futures. And, Joe and I have been doing this to get this Sunday night podcast together all year. We know who we like. So we'll probably kind of be battling over some teams that we're both intrigued by at the top. And then we'll get to some by the end at the bottom who, it's like, here's like a little dart, but maybe it's, not as confident as the early ones. So, Joe, do you want? We can talk about first pick. I'll give you first pick in this draft. Do you want to get us started with one of these team futures in our little draft here with a week to go?
Yeah, I think I'm going to take like a decently chalky one because it's really I think it's just the spot. It's juice number. This market is on FanDuel, and Jim and I talked about this before. We were trying to figure out the angle, and I'm going to take it right now. And it's going to be the Indiana Pacers to make the Eastern Conference semifinals at minus 152. Basically, the way I see it is they're going to either play the Detroit Pistons or the Milwaukee Bucks. They're not going to move up. They're not going to pass the Knicks. And there's really no other flexibility in the Eastern Conference when you look at the standings. It's pretty firm that those are going to be the matchups. I'm going to like them in either spot against either Milwaukee or Detroit. Milwaukee is just damaged goods right now. As good as Giannis is, Giannis could score 50 points, I think, in every game of the series, and the Bucks, I think, would still lose because they have just nothing else. They just really have nothing else. And then for Detroit, I just think this is a good opportunity to bet on a Pacers team that I think is like honestly a little bit undervalued. I think the reason we're even getting minus 152 is because there's the potential that it is Milwaukee. I think if it was Detroit, I think that Indiana would be a bigger favorite based on their pedigree. In fact, they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Obviously, there were some injuries, things like that, but Tyrese Halliburton's kind of rounded into form. I think this is a significantly better team over the second half of the season. So I like them to advance out of the first round. And at minus 152, I'll take that against either team, especially knowing that they're going to have home court advantage and get that extra home game.
Yeah, I love that. This was on my list for sure. Like you said, you really it's going to be one of two teams. Milwaukee is a team. We talked about this on the pod a couple weeks ago, where matchup wise, we were interested in the Pacers against the Bucks, even if like before Giannis was out last year. Now it's Dame who's out for the Bucks. They just can't make it healthy to the postseason, and it's one of those where I think the name value of it, even though it's the Pacers who made the run in the postseason last year, it's the Bucks who are still being treated that way because they have Giannis. But listen, Brandon and I talked about this on the Future Fridays podcast. Halliburton has the potential to play at, if not Giannis level, a tier just below. His BPM over the last few months is basically at a Giannis level. And he wasn't even the best part of the Pacers team that made the run last year in the postseason. No. They really have a bunch of weapons. Siakam's really good. I honestly think the escalator of this, of just the Pacers winning the East at 33-1, I'm like intrigued by. I really think that this Pacers team is pretty fun and underrated by the market, just being slept on a little bit. They started the season slow, and it seemed like the numbers never really caught up to them in the market. It's a team that I think is undervalued, and as much as I love playing a ceiling, I also love getting in on the floor here at minus 152 before we lock in a matchup that I'll, like you said, like either way.
I think too, like if you were going to take it, you can get plus 590 to make the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that's essentially saying they're going to be like 4-1 against Cleveland, which is probably a little bit long. I'm probably going to want them in that series, but I'm also hesitant a little bit because I think I'd much rather play like plus 1.5 games. I think like that's where I would be in that series. So I don't mind this like a plus 590, but I think the certainty of Cleveland is so high, at least coming out of the first round, that
Yeah.
I'm comfortable saying like, all right, like I would wait and just bet it if they're in that series, barring injuries, like whatever.
All right, I'm gonna go. So I'm gonna with my first pick. I'm gonna go over to the Western Conference, which has a lot of unknowns right now. So it's a little bit scary. But I'm gonna take something with plus money. I think when there are unknowns, you want to skew towards the plus money rather than the minus money. It's not gonna be a crazy long shot. And Joe, you're gonna. This I probably could wait on this honestly, but I don't want you taking the plus side of it. It's a rare team that we are not going to be in lockstep on in the postseason this year. It's the Lakers. My Laker haterade is flowing. I'm going to pick them to lose in round one plus 142. This is semi insane. It's going against playoff Luka. It's going against LeBron James. It's going against the whistle that they're going to get in this. But I look at this Laker team. They won again today. They beat the Thunder. They're looking like they're going to be that 3 seed. They look pretty good there. That the options for the 6 seed are just all the teams I like. We're basically locked into a team that I like in this 6 seed. And I know that the Lakers are playing well right now, and I know that it's playoff Luka. But if I can get plus 142 on one of these teams that I'm really high on, I'll get to these teams later, and I'll get longer numbers for them. We'll talk through that. But I think there are a lot of options for the Lakers going out in this first round. I know I can't sell you on it entirely, Joe, but what are your Lakers thoughts? How wrong am I here?
I just feel like the Lakers are just gonna absolutely fry. Like they are. The offense is real. The offense is legit. I think that there still are some wrinkles between the LeBron and Luka and Reeves kind of trio, but at the same time, they have a game like the other day where everybody had 20 points 5 times. So it's. I think that there is a lot of possibility for this team to be almost impossible to guard. And, obviously the Lakers on the flip side have struggled defensively, but there have been some flashes in terms of the effort, things like that. So I do wonder if coming into the playoffs, I think they're going to have that like little bit of a break, like that week off, right? Their schedule is relatively soft. It's not like they have a stronger schedule, but like I said, you have matchups against the Thunder and the Rockets who aren't incentivized to win.
Yeah.
And the other games are against the Blazers who are now eliminated and the Mavericks who need the game, but also like that's a game too. Like Luka is going to go fucking crazy.
If they somehow draw the Mavericks in round one, I'll be regretting this pick. But I think a lot would have to happen to get that matchup.
Yeah, but I do think that you're like betting it now though. There is the opportunity that, maybe they drop a couple games that are surprising. Like maybe they lose, maybe they go 1-3, and then all of a sudden you're in the play-in. And then now your whole like scheme is completely different. So you don't get the extra rest, you don't get the extra opportunity, you don't get like the softer matchup, the home games, the extra rest, whatever. So there are a couple extra outs too, besides just losing in the first round.
For sure. All right, why don't you take us to your second pick in this draft?
All right, I am going to be grabbing. Man, this is tough. I feel like there were a couple options here that I really kind of liked, but I'm going to take the Dallas Mavericks to make the Western Conference playoffs at plus 650. I think that when you look at the standings, they have it's not the easiest schedule. It's not the hardest schedule, but they have one game. They only have 3 games left. They have one game against the Lakers, which might be important for the Lakers. It might not be important for the Lakers. It kind of depends. They have one game against the Raptors, and the Raptors are literally doing everything in their power to lose basketball games.
And then they're still winning because their coach is actually decent, and they have like a decent amount of talent.
And then you have a game against the Memphis Grizzlies, who this is part of why I want to bet. This is part of why I like this angle, because you have the game against the Grizzlies, which I think if Dallas wins that game, which I think that they can, they're healthy now. Pretty much everybody's getting minutes. Anthony Davis is back. And if you can win that game against Memphis, who has been struggling a bit, it probably forces Memphis into a situation where they are in the play-in tournament.
Yeah.
They're in the 7-8 because they have a tough schedule. They have a game against Denver. They have a game against, and they have a game against Minnesota as well. So they have one game against the Hornets and one against the Mavericks. So I think that Dallas is live in that type of matchup. And given that I think that they're live there, where I think there's a pretty legitimate argument that Anthony Davis would be the best player I think there's an argument that Anthony Davis is the best player in the Western Conference play-in tournament. Like there's a possibility that that's the case. So I get that this is kind of like a 2-leg parlay. It's like a multi-leg parlay, and that's why you're getting plus 650 on it. But I think that based on their schedule and based on the fact that I think that they could come out of this, if they're playing Dallas, if you're looking at the West too, I think it's a decent chance it could still be the Clippers there. But I think the 9-10 game is going to be against the Kings. And the Kings have shown me nothing like that's super impressive. So I think it's likely that Dallas stays in the play-in, that they get out of, and they're able to be at least the 9 or the 10. And then I like them to win 2 games against what those potential options are.
Yeah, this was on my list as well. I'm Dallas curious, and I think Memphis looked like they steadied the ship a little bit in recent games, but I still just am not super high on this team. I think that the loss of Brandon Clark was really, really important. And listen, they're playing Edey so much right now, and do you really want to be reliant on like 30 minutes of Edey in the playoffs against Anthony Davis?
Anthony Davis, Derek Lively, and Daniel Gafford, that is just a nightmare.
Yeah, I really think it's a bad matchup for them. And the Ja of it all, did talk through with Brandon that like Ja has been really good in the postseason. So maybe that's your thing, but like I don't know, the Memphis stuff right now. I have a lot of questions. They're learning a new scheme on the fly. And really, a part of it's just the number here is plus 540 to make through the playoffs. Like you said, it's a little bit of a 2-leg parlay. I just have so little faith in the Kings. They have been truly bad under Doug Christie. So I really like this one as well. This was on my list. I'm going to go. We haven't done a crazy long shot now, so I'm going to do a crazy long shot. Y'all can probably guess what team this is coming from. This is a team that I just keep going back to the well in the second half of the season here. I'm going Anthony Edwards, Finals MVP, 75-1 on DraftKings. I was debating them to make the conference finals. I was debating them to make it out round 1. Here's the thing. I am going to want those bets almost certainly. I'm really in on this Wolves team, but with the unknowns this second, I want the ceiling because if I'm high on Minnesota, I'm going to like them in their first round matchup. I'm going to like them in the second round matchup. The other part of this, though, is that you talk through the schedules. Minnesota is one of the easiest schedules. I think that they can get up to the 4-5. Maybe even the dream for them is getting to the 6, drawing either Lakers or Rockets in the first round. If it's Wolves Lakers, it's going to be infuriating because it's like the most kissed on the forehead franchise and the most like shat on the forehead franchise, and the Lakers are going to win, and I'm like, this isn't like, it's going to be terrible whistle the whole time, and I'm going to be so angry, and the Lakers will somehow win, and I'll be pissed off. But the Lakers, if they draw the Lakers in the first round and they get to avoid the Thunder until the conference finals, potentially the Thunder, they'll have to go through their own little gambit. That 6 seed could be looking like a really, really tasty spot, and with their remaining schedule, right now they're in 7th, but again, they're literally a half game out of 4th. Like they could also move up and just get home court in the first round, and suddenly, that's a much easier look for them. So Anthony Edwards, one of those players who really steps up his play in the postseason. I don't know if you were watching the other night. He had just that insane game winner, just like flung it over 2 dudes. He
shouldn't have happened.
he is really built for the big moments, and he's starting to get better in the clutch and playoffs and clutch. He is the type of guy who there's not a ton of people that can win Finals MVP. He's on the short list. So I want Anthony Edwards. I want my Wolves 75-1. I think you're in on the Wolves too, right, Joe?
Yeah, I like the Wolves. I just am struggling with the bracket. Yeah. And I think that's why it's like this makes some more sense. Like take the big number. Because if it's kind of like if they're rolling, then I think you have to like them to keep advancing. It's like some of the questions. I think it's just a lot of the questions that we have about them. Can they generate enough offense? Will the Randall thing work in the playoffs? But if it does, then it's not crazy.
I mean, one of the biggest things is like are they able to adjust their rotations in the playoffs? And like Gobert and Randall, there are big question marks around both those guys. Can they
Yeah.
kind of limit Gobert to 27 minutes, Randall to 27, and in the clutch, maybe neither of those guys is on the court, like, or one
Yeah.
of them, and like it's like maybe they literally do Randall on offense, Gobert on defense down the stretch, and also Randall on offense with like the caveat that like if you ball hog, you will come off
It's gonna just be
instantly.
Naz Reid.
Yeah, honestly,
Yeah.
you could be Naz Reid and Gobert, and Randall gets you the buckets in the first half. They have really nice depth, and they have the ability to do that. So I love this Minnesota team in part because of Ant, but I also think that there's other good performers on the team, and the market's just so low on them in comparison to a lot of these other teams in the West. Warriors and Clippers, two other teams I really like. The Wolves number is just so much longer for teams that I think are, about the same talent level. And really that's what some of this Lakers hate comes down to is it's not that I think the Lakers are the worst team. I just think that they are priced too high in comparison to some of these other teams in the West who I really like. So Joe, why don't you take us to your third pick in this draft?
Yeah, so I'm going to take the Los Angeles Clippers to make the Western Conference Finals at plus 570.
That was my next pick. I should have known that you were more likely to go that route instead of the stupid Lakers pick I did round one.
Yeah, so I think that you can play them to make the Western Conference semifinals. It's plus 142. And then I like them to make the Western Conference Finals at plus 570. The biggest thing for me with the Clippers, and it's been kind of everybody's thing over the past however many years, was just, are they healthy? Is Kawhi healthy? What's the situation? He's healthy, apparently. He's healthy enough to play him back-to-backs.
Yep.
And their schedule, going down the stretch, is not super difficult. The Rockets, who I don't think the game matters. You have a game against the Spurs, who are tanking. They're still playing. They're competitive, but they're like tanking. The Kings, who have an interesting bit of their schedule because I think they want that home game, but they also can't really move up. So it kind of depends on how everything else is going.
And also they're the Kings.
They're the Kings. And then you have a matchup against the Warriors, who, if you beat them, you're going to move up. Like you're just going to lead. Like that's going to be a very important game, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that that's going to be a spot where you see, everybody kind of deployed. And honestly, like I like the Clippers in a lot of these matchups that they're likely to have in the Western Conference. I would like them, if they're in the play-in, I would like them to beat Memphis as it's currently situated. If you have to play Minnesota or Denver, you have a big who you can use effectively in that matchup. And if you play the Lakers or the Warriors, you're super switchable. You have Kawhi Leonard. You have Chris Dunn. Like you have a lot of options. You have Ben Simmons. You have a lot of different options that you can throw at some of these teams for defensive purposes. So I think that they have a very strong opportunity here. And I think that, based on some of the tiebreakers, it's probably like unlikely that they're able to move up all the way to like the 4 or 5. It seems highly unlikely they'd go all the way up to 3 based on where they are. But there is some opportunity for them to move up like a touch and keep them out of maybe the Thunder matchup in the second round. But either way, even if they match up against the Thunder, I don't hate the matchup against the Thunder because of the level of switchability that they have, because of who they have personnel-wise with, like I said, Kawhi, Norman Powell, James Harden, Ivica Zubac. Like I think that you have enough and like a strong enough half court offense, especially to be a problem for like a team like Oklahoma City, or at least to make some noise where this plus 570 isn't crazy. And I'm just hoping that as part of the out that they're just not on that part of the bracket.
Yeah, I mean, the Clippers are honestly kind of just like a slightly worse Thunder. They just have like all that length and wing and just make it miserable for teams. And they're slightly worse because they don't have a Shea. But if Kawhi Leonard is playoff Kawhi, we have seen him do that a lot. And if they, again, we keep going back to this, but like if they trust his health enough to do a back-to-back, his first of the season with a week to go before the playoffs, like that's like a relatively risky move with Kawhi. So I think they are I think they are firm believers in his health right now.
And the other thing is too, I think that's a fair point. Like I think Shea outside of Jokic probably is maybe like the best, and maybe Luka is like the best player in the Western Conference right now, especially in a playoff setting. And I think, you could make any argument that any of those three is the best player in the West, right? But I would say if you look at the Clippers, the drop off between like Kawhi to Harden to Norm is pretty high. Like it's a pretty high like top 3 players, and then honestly even Zubac is really really good. So it's like if you look at that 4, that can kind of stack up against anybody in the West, I think.
Yeah, and then like super utility guys, Chris Dunn. If we don't mention Chris Dunn, Matt's gonna like appear as like he's not tonight, but he's gonna come and like haunt us if we don't mention Chris Dunn, his first team all defense guy. But yeah, I mean, I love this pick. I even had Kawhi Finals MVP 125-1 written down here. I don't think I would have taken it. I like yours to make the conference finals at plus 570 more, but the Clippers are in the tier with the Wolves and the Warriors as teams I'm very interested in the West. So for my next pick, well, why don't I just do it? I just said the other team. We've now drafted the Wolves and the Wolves and the Clippers. I'm just doing the Warriors title 16-1. Listen, this is a team where if things are clicking, their ceiling is as high as they. They've got Steph, they've got Jimmy, they've got Draymond. They have all of. If you are a person who weighs playoff experience, they have so much of it. Now, I do have to say that watching tonight's game against the Rockets, like there are teams that can give them trouble out there. And actually, we haven't talked Houston yet. I don't know if we'll get to them. They're kind of a team that is a little bit tough to figure out right now. They just beat the Thunder and the Warriors in back-to-back games. And I do think that the length that they throw at teams, we've been saying all season, look to fade the Rockets in the playoffs, look to fade in the playoffs. At some point, their resume and the wins they have over good teams is going to have to be notable. We were talking through before, and now I'm kind of zagging off of the Warriors here, but we were talking through before we started recording about how they're minus 142 to lose in the first round. So that's implying that they will be the 2 seed, and they'll be a pretty notable underdog. I know that was vaguely intriguing to you to bet them to get through. It was vaguely intriguing to me for them to lose. So I think it's just kind of a stay away team. But the point being, Warriors in general, there are ways that you can get to Steph, but there have been ways to get to Steph his entire career. There's a litany of amazing defenders who he has taken out in his routes to many a title. Now he doesn't have a Kevin Durant, but Jimmy Butler and the offense he creates with back cuts, and he's worked so well with Podziemski. I think that the ceiling of this Warriors team, even more so than some of the other teams in the West, where like the Clippers, you're like, man, is Kawhi's health going to last the whole time? The Wolves, it's like, man, does Ant have one of those series where he kind of shoots himself out of it and they go down in 7 like we've seen in the past? The Warriors, it's kind of like of all the ceilings, they're the most intriguing. I also was looking at the odds of previous title winners for the last like 5 years, like kind of since the KD Warriors ended. And it's a lot of title teams. So we've had 2 that are just short, the Celtics last year and then the Lakers in the bubble. But there's a lot of title winners that start the postseason right around that 10-1 era. So that area, and that's kind of like the Cavs and the Warriors. The Cavs are a little bit shorter, the Warriors are a little bit longer, but they're in that tier where usually, even though I'm high on the Wolves and the Clippers and getting their numbers, like we always say on this podcast, part of that's building a portfolio. It's the Cavs and the Warriors. They're really in that tier that they potentially like can sneak up and legitimately win a title. It's hard to really come out of nowhere and win a title, but they're in that tier where it's very viable. So we've now covered the 3 teams I love in the West: the Warriors, the Wolves, and the Clippers. I had to wrap up the West with my West with the Warriors there to win the title of 16-1.
Yeah, I think that you need to just take the team to win as opposed to trying to shoot for like a finals MVP, because I think that like Curry is obviously the favorite, but Jimmy Butler's obviously live to win that award. And I don't think they would hesitate to give Jimmy like a vote of confidence there, or like a vote if it comes down to it for like a finals or East or Western Conference Finals MVP type of award.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's see. Do we want to go? Should we each take? So we each have 3 right now, right?
Yeah.
Let's each take 1 more.
All right. I keep waffling back and forth, but honestly, like I kind of want to cheat. I have like
let's do 2 more. Let's do 2 more then.
All right. I'll take this one. I think that the Cavs to win the finals is still I just think it's an undervalued bet. Like I just don't understand. Like, they're 5-1. I'm like line shopping it now to make sure I'm giving you the best number. But no, there's a plus 650
I'd
right
say
now.
there's a 650 still out
Yeah,
there.
there's a plus 650 on DraftKings still. I can't really wrap my head around this number. Like, I get that Boston is Boston. Boston's been cooking lately, and you presumably have to deal with Oklahoma City in the West. But it's possible you don't. And Cleveland, if we weren't talking so much about Oklahoma City, Cleveland is having like a historically good year.
Yeah.
So at plus 650, I do think that there is some opportunity for like a Darius Garland or an Evan Mobley to win like a finals MVP. So I'm going to stay away from like the Donovan Mitchell chalk of it, depending on the matchup, at least for now anyway. But at plus 650, I think I'm still getting a great number on a team that I'm going to like to at least get to the Eastern Conference Finals. So, I think that the path maybe is a little bit tougher because you have to play. It's highly probable that you have to beat Boston and you have to beat, obviously, whoever comes out of the West. But I just think plus 250 or 650 is way too long for Cleveland.
Yeah, I really do think that it's, again, and I don't want to imply that it's like skepticism of Boston or OKC. It's more that I think that those are the clear 3 best teams, and they're not being priced that way. The Cleveland's being priced in a tier much below that. And
Yeah.
I really don't think that really should be the case. And if I wasn't, if you didn't take them, I was going to run back a pick that I had from Friday with Brandon, which was Garland Finals MVP 40-1. I kind of talked through that there about how I think you're right that Mitchell's like really short. It's like not really worth it. If you want to just bet the Cavs, either bet the Cavs outright, or I think there's something to be said about Garland. I won't repeat too much, but basically Mitchell really struggled against the Thunder this year. He got put in the torture chamber. I think he was like 6 of 31 combined the 2 games.
Yeah.
And Garland's going to be the guy they go to in the clutch. He was combined leading scorer in those games against OKC. I just don't think he should be 6 times longer than Mitchell's odds for the most likely opponent that they will have. So I really like Garland Finals MVP at 40-1, but I'm with you on Cleveland for sure. I mean, I've been there the whole time.
The number's just too long. Yeah,
exactly. All right, I'll reward you since you threw me a bone with Cleveland. I'm gonna throw you a bone, Joe. I'm going to pick the New York Knicks. I'm going to pick Jalen Brunson, Eastern Conference Finals MVP 14-1 on DraftKings. Listen, I still am skeptical of the Knicks. I'll be honest. I do think that I would make them about 10-1 to win the Eastern Conference Finals, and they're like plus 750. So it's weird that I'm getting on the Knicks. I just think it's insane that the Knicks are plus 750 and Brunson's plus 1400. Listen,
you want to know where he's even longer? He's longer. He's 25-1 on ESPN.
No way.
Yeah.
I need an ESPN now. Hit me up if you're out there.
That's a crazy bet.
That's an insane number, because if the Knicks get through this, it's Brunson. I'm sorry. Cat's great, but if they take out Boston and Cleveland, it is via Jalen Brunson. It means he's scoring 35 a game. It means he's creating offense. Even if he's scoring 30 and Cat's scoring 25, he's going to have the assists, even if Cat has the rebounds. I just don't. And he's like the heart and soul of the team. And I do think to a degree that gets accounted for. So I'm not super high on the Knicks in general. I do think it's pretty interesting that OG Anunoby has he used
insane.
He used the time that Brunson was out to level up in a way that I was hoping Mikal Bridges would. Bridges has, to a degree, he's been playing better, but if Bridges can suddenly be the 4th banana and OG is the 3rd, and if Cat's back and healthy and playing well as the 2, suddenly that's a pretty interesting team. So this is more, this is the reason we're a little later in the draft. It's not a team that I'm in love with, but I mean, now that I know it's 25-1, I might have taken a pick or two earlier. That's a crazy number.
That number is insane. I think you have to play.
Will you do me a favor while you're looking stuff up? What are their odds to win the East at ESPN? Is it just way off market?
12-1.
So they think that's just insane.
They have Boston at minus 140, Cleveland at plus 170, which
the 12-1 is a decent enough number. But how do you have New York at 12-1 and then him for MVP at 33-1?
They have Cat at 33. and then the next closest is like OG, Josh Hart, or both 200 to 1.
So they see Brunson as Cat as equally likely to win Eastern Conference
Give or
Finals
take.
MVP. I think that's
and then they have a longer. I think it's because they also have a longer price on the Knicks
in general.
So it's like naturally going upwards. So I think it's like even more skewed because of that.
That's wild. Okay, let's each do one more pick, because it sounded like you had one more.
Yeah, so this one it's not, I'm cheating because I'm taking the Eastern Conference to win the NBA Finals at plus 115.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I think that the top 3 teams, there's 2 of them in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
Like I just like my shot at getting one of them in. I just like my shot at getting one of them in. And then honestly, I think even in those matchups, I don't hate Cleveland or Boston against presumably Oklahoma City. But if it's not Oklahoma City, they're going to be favored by a lot. Yeah. I think like they're going to be favored in like by a big number. I think that it's going to be a minus. It's definitely going to be a minus number. Depending on the opponent, it could be, I think, maybe even as high as like 2 to 1. So I think at plus 115 to get both Boston and Cleveland, and like obviously like there's a chance with New York, I think, but I think after that I would be like, oh, I wish I didn't have this, but like I think that I just think that the top of the East is much stronger than the collection of teams in the West, especially because the path through the West is like a gauntlet. And like you might just come out of it, you might get there, and Oklahoma City might get there, but they might just be beat. Yeah. So I know that there's the idea that the Eastern Conference Finals might be like a war between 2 teams, but it also might not be. It might not be too bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're in the East, you have a really easy path to start, and then in the West, I mean, we're looking at potentially like this second, the 8 seed is Memphis, so that like we're not as high on Memphis, but Minnesota in the 7, like you're going to get a war in the first round, and then a war in second round, and war in third, and there are any one of multiple things that could go. Whereas on the Eastern Conference, it's a lot easier to see a potential, like last year with Boston, where you get a couple of decent breaks, and suddenly you just like cruise to the finals, and you're incredibly fresh. So I like that one, especially with that combined with the fact that 2 of the you and I agree there's 3 elite teams, 2 of them are in one conference. You said it's plus 150.
Yeah, or plus 115.
115. Okay, that
makes... like I think it's even possible. Like we know that whatever teams are in basically like the 7-8 and the 8-9 out of the Eastern Conference play-in teams are both bad. Like whatever teams come out of there are not great basketball teams relative to the rest of the field here. If you look at the Western Conference, it's like entirely possible that like you could have the Warriors as like the 8 seed. Yeah. Like it's possible. Yeah. Like it could be like the Nuggets and the Warriors is like the 7 and 8. Like it's unlikely because of where they are, but it's possible. Well, and like what? You could maybe have Minnesota and LA, like the Clippers there. So like that first round matchup is not going to be easy for Oklahoma City. I think like unless it's Dallas or like unless it's Sacramento. Or maybe even unless it's Memphis, but like there is just I think there's just more possibility that the first round matchup is hard, and then that makes the rest of this, like the rest of the playoffs, a lot more difficult because it just aggregates on itself. Yeah,
100%. And speaking of, so for my last pick, and we are at the last pick, so we're stretching a little bit, but I'm going to take a Nuggets future, and it's not a good one. I am taking them to lose in the first round at minus 118. Now, I was hoping this number was going to be a little longer. I thought we were going to get plus money. It's pretty telling and pretty damning of where the Nuggets are right now, that it's minus money for them to lose in the first round. But listen, there's a pretty decent chance that they slide into the play-in. They've got 3 games remaining, pretty tough. Like I if I had to guess, I would guess that they go 48-34. And looking over the other schedules for these teams, I think that's going to be the 7, if not the 8 seed. There's also, if you really want to get crazy on this, them to miss the playoffs is plus 1,300. Now, that would require them probably losing at home to Dallas, which doesn't seem incredibly likely.
Lose 5 games in a row.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't seem incredibly likely, but plus 1,300, decent number. But to lose in round 1, minus 118, we're seeing Jokic put up insane games in losing efforts right now. He hit the 60, 25, 20, right? It was so crazy.
Yeah, they lost.
And they lost. Now, and he had 41 tonight, and they lost. Now, there was no Murray. But that's kind of the problem. If Murray's not like in tip-top shape, this doesn't really feel like it's like let's let Murray healthy. We saw what they did last season. They pushed, and now they are in a position where they need to be pushing even more. Like if that's your thing, if you're pushing to get a seed, you're not resting Jamal Murray right now. So this Nuggets team really does not look great. The Russell Westbrook thing has really gone downhill pretty fast. They look like they got 5 players that you would trust in the postseason. And, if Murray's even semi-questionable, that's down to 4. And if my MPJ is cold, that's like, there's a lot of, and I think I even rounded up maybe there are a lot of question marks. This is the best player in basketball, which is why, it's a little bit scary to be laying minus money on them to lose in round 1. So why it wasn't my first pick, but Nuggets I don't think the Nuggets are going to be a team that I'm on. It seems to be a case of the best player in basketball and, an MVP in other seasons, just not having the talent around him. And that's why the numbers are so crazy. It's because he just doesn't have the talent around him. So I'll take the Nuggets to go out in the first round at -118.
Hell yeah. I think it's possible, but it's it always feels funny betting against Jokic. The guy is just so good.
It really does. It's my fades right now are Luka, LeBron, and Jokic. This should go really well for me.
You're sick.
All right, that was our futures draft. Hopefully that was useful for folks. Hopefully you got a couple bets in there. And then obviously next week we'll be back and we'll have a lot more knowledge. We'll be off that crazy Sunday. I don't even know if we'll be doing this exact show. We might be doing some live stuff for you as well. So definitely keep an eye out for that. That Sunday should be really fun. There should be a couple of games with really big impacts. I think is that Warriors Clippers game on the Sunday to end the season even?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too.
I'm checking the.
Well, I'll buy you a minute. I'm gonna soft launch us into Monday's slate. So Monday is a really gross slate. We mentioned they got the national championship on the men's side. Congrats to Paige Beckers on the women's side. She avoided the curse. It was almost she became the first UConn star to not end her career at the ring, but she got the ring. They dominated SC. That was great to see for her. Really, really cool. But on the men's side, NBA's a little bit scared. They're ducking them. So we've got the Kings and the Pistons. We've got the Sixers and the Heat. Joe, you want to give me your best bet for Monday?
Yeah, I'm gonna right now. I would say this is more of like a lean, but I like Domantas Sabonis over 12.5 rebounds. I think the matchup is good against this Detroit team. I know that Sabonis and the Kings are on a back-to-back, but I do think that Sabonis is one of the more like sturdy players in the league. He's had relative success on these games where he on 0 rest, but also for the Pistons, Duren is questionable. He might play, he might not play. I kind of like it, honestly, either way. I think that there's plenty of opportunity for him to get some extra rebounds, just being able to camp out down low if it's Duren. Same kind of idea with Isaiah Stewart. Sabonis should get some opportunities there. But look, this is going to be a little bit more of a defensive-minded game. Detroit is a strong defensive team right now. And I think that Sabonis has some opportunities then to clean up some of the offensive glass as well. So over 12.5 rebounds, I think it's a good spot. He's coming off of 2 like relatively down games, 9 boards against Cleveland, 11 against Charlotte. But before then he had been putting up some monster rebounding games. So give me the over 12.5 rebounds. I think it's a little bit of a buy low spot for Sabonis on the back-to-back.
Nice. I like it. And yeah, you mentioned Jalen Duren being questionable. Yeah. In addition to this being just a 2-game slate, we have one. We don't even know one injury report, and on the other 3, there's at least 2 key players questionable on all these. Yeah. So it is a mess of a Monday slate. We're doing our best here. My bet is actually going to be conditional on one of those injuries. So Andrew Wiggins is listed questionable. He's been out for the last 5 games. If he comes back, I'm going to really like this bet, though. If he comes back, I'm going to hit Bam Adebayo under 35.5 points, rebounds, assists. Adebayo's been playing great. So these numbers have kind of inflated while he's been playing really well of late. Part of that is Wiggins being out, because when Wiggins is off the court, his usage goes up 2.3%. His rebounds go up 2.4%. And if you really want to target the assists. His assists go up 7.2% with Wiggins off the court. So if Wiggins is back, flip that, look towards the under. It's also a game with a pretty big spreads, 14. I think the spreads may be a little bit high, but the Sixers team is pretty terrible and probably will be benching all their good players if they're playing well, because they really do not want to win. They are hitting the tank as hard as I've seen in a long time. So I'm gonna like Bam under 35.5 points, rebounds, assists, only if Andrew Wiggins plays. So you want the under if he plays. If not, rock with the Sabonis rebounds. Joe got you at least one bet for an otherwise gross slate. Watch some men's college hoop. Which Cooper flag was there? Just because I've enjoyed watching him in my very limited college basketball viewing. But that Houston team's super fun, and I wouldn't mind seeing Kelvin Sampson get a championship. So, Joe, any final words to send us out here?
No, I just think this is a kind of gross slate, and that Sunday we do have that Clippers Warriors game.
Nice.
And just one note, DraftKings just popped it. Mavericks to make the playoffs are 7-1 there.
Yeah, definitely shop all these, because when Joe and I were doing the rundown today, these lines weren't available, and then we had to scramble last second right before we were recording to get some of these numbers. So I'll always shop around for sure. The Action, if you go to the Action website, there's really good tools for shopping futures there as well as in the app. So make sure you download that app, of course. Make sure you rate the show 5 stars, of course. Give us a watch on YouTube as well. We're over there if you're just listening to the podcast. But otherwise, thanks for hanging out, and let's get buckets.